after kidnapping so-called obese children, it's safe to assume that if these activity levels, if these exercise levels measured by these wristbands are not up to scratch, then harsh questions of the parents will be asked. Yet another reason to join the growing army of parents who have decided to homeschool their children. Moving on, Obama propaganda front Media Matters attacks Alex Jones and Ron Paul. The admitted Obama White House propaganda front Media Matters is now trying to kill two birds with one stone by smearing Ron Paul because he regularly appears as a guest on the Alex Jones show. Woe betide. The headline, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones rallies for frequent guest Ron Paul. Quote, though Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul has received scorn from some in the media, he can count on a loud and toxic supporter, radio host Alex Jones, one of the country's leading conspiracy theorists and promoters of the claim that 9/11 was an inside job. And this piece basically tries to imply that it's some kind of dirty secret that we support Ron Paul and that Ron Paul's team acknowledges our audience as enthusiastic supporters of his campaign. It's guilt by association, trying to link Ron Paul with the supposedly discredited, in their words, Alex Jones. But the question is this. If Alex Jones and INFOWARS are so discredited, then why has traffic to our website surged over the last 2 years, while traffic to MediaMatters.org has dwindled? Why does INFOWARS rank within the top 1,800 websites on Alexa.com, whereas MediaMatters.org is struggling down at 15,000? Why are they constantly attacking us? I'll tell you why, because at least we try and be honest in our reporting and what we're about. Media Matters, on the other hand, won't tell you that they're an attack arm for the Obama administration. They won't tell you about how they're tied at the hip with Think Progress as part of John Podesta's progressive media propaganda campaign, described as, quote, in their own words, quote, a war room for promoting the foreign and domestic policies of Barack Obama. This is John Podesta, Clinton's chief of staff, head of Barack Obama's transition team. This is the guy behind Media Matters attacking Alex Jones, attacking Ron Paul. This is the guy who runs the organization whose stated goal, in their own words, is to, quote, drive the White House's message and agenda, and yet they claim to be this non-partisan media group. They won't tell you about the $1 million donation they got from billionaire globalist and convicted insider trader George Soros. Now, the difference between INFOWARS as a media platform and Media Matters is that we don't pretend to be anything else than what we write and speak about every day. We're out in the open. We're proud to be mouthpieces and supporters of Ron Paul because we share the same message of liberty. There's no shame in that. That's why we've got total transparency. And we don't need to hide who our paymasters are, like Media Matters, because their paymasters are George Soros and people whose mission, in their own words, is to drive home the message of Obama and his White House. So Media Matters is nothing more than a mouthpiece for the Obama administration and the Democratic Party, which makes it no surprise that they're attacking both Alex Jones and Ron Paul in the same breath. But again, we're not funded by the Democrats and George Soros. We're funded by our own listeners and readers. And the fact that people are becoming more aware of that is why Media Matters, struggling down in 15,000 on Alexa.com, is losing more readers every day, whereas Infowars.com becomes increasingly trusted and increasingly surges in the ranking because people have seen past the little conspiracy theory jibe and are starting to realize that at least we try to be honest in reporting the facts, and we're backed by our own message of liberty, which we share with Ron Paul, not backed by the Obama administration and George Soros. Moving along now, Kurt Nimmo, Infowars.com, reports former SS boss proposes global email fusion center. Ronald Noble, the former head of the Secret Service, the BATF, and Secretary General of Interpol, wants to create a fusion center with the ability to track and trace your email. Noble says that although there is no known threat posed against the Olympics planned for 2012 in London, the state needs a fusion center to make sure. quote, a smart terrorist would know that if the world's attention is focused on something and they commit a terrorist act, it will help them create the kind of fear that would make people want to leave London, Noble told The Independent before visiting Scotland Yard to discuss arrangements for the games. So again, basically this whole 2012 London thing is a huge police state showcase. You're going to have thousands of troops on the streets providing, quote, security. You're going to have the kind of loudspeakers, conversation monitors, every form of high-tech surveillance imaginable. It's basically just a big plaything for the police state mechanisms, the toys that they're going to use as a routine in the future. And this is just another aspect of that, tracking the emails. Of course, everything's already tracked through Echelon and the NSA. This is just another means of bringing it out in the open. Moving on to our next story, privacy watchdog presses court on NSA-Google partnership. This is Steve Watson, INFOWARS.com. The privacy watchdog group Epic has urged the Court of Appeals to disclose more information regarding the widely publicized close working relationship between the National Security Agency and Google. Epic, short for the Electronic Privacy Information Center, has filed an opening brief challenging the NSA's response to the group's Freedom of Information Act request for details on the cybersecurity agreement that the search engine shares with the spy agency. Story hit the headlines a year ago in January 2010 following a highly sophisticated and targeted cyber attack on the corporate infrastructure of Google and some 20 other large US companies. The attack was blamed on the Chinese government, prompting Google to embrace a collaboration with the federal agency in charge of global electronic surveillance. So again, electronic surveillance, Google working with the NSA, all in the name of cybersecurity. Yet we look at every major act of cyber warfare that's taken place over the past 2 years, and in every single case, it leads back to the US, Israel, and Britain, which are the same three powers calling for all this cybersecurity authority to supposedly defend against cyber warfare attacks. The Stuxnet attack on Iran, New York Times admitted it was traced back to the US and Israel. And then, of course, it was openly reported a few months ago that the Obama administration had launched a cyber attack against Libya when they were in the process of trying to overthrow Colonel Gaddafi with the aid of NATO and the Al-Qaeda rebels. So while the US, Britain, and Israel are engaging flagrantly in their own acts of cyber warfare, they're demanding all these surveillance powers in the name of defending against cyber warfare. Again, it's Orwellian bizarro world, and it's advancing with this NSA-Google partnership announcement. Coming up on InfoWars Nightly News, Alex Jones talks to Antonio Bila about a shocking incident on New Year's Eve where Bila was arrested for trying to film a case of police brutality and defend a woman from police abuse, another case of police treating recording as if it's illegal. Also, Alex will talk to Lionel from Lionel Media about Second Amendment, in particular the case of the lady defending her home against an intruder. The NDAA bill, Ron Paul's campaign, and the TSA. Now, in signing off, I encourage all our great subscribers to continue to support us. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing to PRISONPLANET.tv. My name's Paul Joseph Watson, signing off. InfoWars Nightly News.
America is in trouble.
Washington is a disgrace.
Government has become too big. It's overtaxing, overspending.
We need to change direction.
We really need change.
We can't afford to make the same mistakes we've made in the past.
Mitt Romney's reputation as a flip-flopper.
He went the other way when he got paid to go the other way.
There is need for economic stimulus.
It's about serial hypocrisy.
This election is about trust.
There's been one true consistent candidate, and that's Dr. Ron Paul.
Ron Paul has been so consistent from the very beginning.
He seems like a more honest candidate.
He tells the truth about what he believes, whether you like it or not.
He's never once voted for a tax increase, never once voted for an unbalanced budget.
Ron Paul's plan is bold, cuts 5 departments. It's what we need.
When he says he's going to cut $1 trillion in the first year, I believe it.
If you don't like how things are going and you're tired of politicians, he's something different.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul
is the one we've been looking for.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
Welcome back. It is the Friday edition of InfoWars Nightly News. I want to thank
Paul Watson for kicking off the news with the news section this evening. I'll also have some other news stories I'm going to cover at the end of tonight's broadcast. We're joined by Lionel, syndicated radio host, of course, has a very popular daily TV show in New York City, where he covers many of the issues that we do, and by the way, is getting top ratings in the process, showing people are hungry for the truth. And then Antonio Buehler, who first got local attention in Austin, now national attention, for being arrested by Austin police for photographing them brutalizing a woman. He's a West Point grad, Army Ranger, honorable career. And he basically got set up by them once they arrested him, has been charged with a whole bunch of stuff. So he's going to be joining us in studio coming up in the next interview we're going to do after we've talked to Lionel. And to try to cover Lionel's bio, we would burn all our time we have with him this evening. But he was also a prosecutor for a while, and he's a lawyer, so he has a great constitutional understanding. But more importantly, a human nature understanding. As a prosecutor, he's seen what's really going on in the world, not the false reality that most of the TV shows are presenting to us. And I thought, man, we got to get Lionel on because I knew who he was, but then I got a chance to really meet him when he introduced me as last year's keynote speaker at the Talkers magazine event in New York. And then since I've had him on 4 or 5 times, he's one of our most popular guests. But here he is on his virgin appearance on the nightly news and his first appearance of 2012. You can tell I'm a talk show host. I just keep talking and talking and feel like I have to keep talking. But Lionel, great to have you here with us, sir.
Oh, exalted Jones, quousque tandem abutere Catalina Padilla Dia Nostra. Happy New Year, my good friend.
Happy New Year to you. I don't speak Latin, but I'm sure that was nice. Wow, so much is going on. I mean, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone, but a Twilight Zone within a Twilight Zone. Like somebody living in the Twilight Zone, what would it take for them to then think this is like the Twilight Zone? You see what I mean? It's like Twilight Zone squared.
Every single day that I listen to you, every single day, I think, well, I've heard everything. And then you'll start off. Just today, you were talking about interspecies breeding. I mean, you're thinking to yourself, this can't be. You know, what is he talking about? And then you always say, but here is the citation. Alex, a couple of things. First of all, I'm just thank you for having me on. I'm honored as always. I wrote a piece. I have a website where I do a podcast every day at lionelmedia.com. And Dr. Paul has been a favorite of mine. Not Dr. Paul per se, but the message of Dr. Paul. Since I've been in talk radio 23 years, I had on the late, great Harry Brown, libertarian, and I have always been a strict adherent to the Constitution. Not because I'm quirky, not because I'm a fan of it, but it is the absolute undergirding, the foundation of this country. And a couple of things I mentioned on this current podcast at lionelmedia.com, and my Twitter, for whatever it's worth, is at lionelmedia. I have a picture of Dr. Paul and the great Dees. I love the illustrator Dees, who was just fantastic. But at the bottom of this, I want people to note, there was a YouTube that I did last night about this woman in Oklahoma who successfully defended herself under fundamental, natural, God-given, just natural law by using 2 firearms, a firearm to defend herself in her home, her hearth, to defend herself and her baby. And yet, this is probably the most staggering example of how many people successfully defend themselves to ward off felonies. I saw this as a prosecutor. Gary Kleck talked about it. John Lott talked about it. And the professional left, the anti-gun media, as you well know, Alex, does everything in its power to subvert, to hide this particular news. So before we get on, I just want to invite people, because this is an important message. There are people out there who use what you might call assault weapons and high-powered weapons to successfully defend themselves. What do the professional left and the I hate to use these code words, but
the victim disarmament crew acts like it was illegal that people were trying to break.
This is John Podesta, Clinton's chief of staff, head of Barack Obama's transition team. This is the guy behind Media Matters attacking Alex Jones, attacking Ron Paul. This is the guy who runs the organization whose stated goal, in their own words, is to, quote, drive the White House's message and agenda, and yet they claim to be this non-partisan media group. They won't tell you about the $1 million donation they got from billionaire globalist and convicted INFOWARS is struggling down at 15,000. Why are they constantly attacking us? I'll tell you why, because at least we try and be honest in our reporting and what we're about. Media Matters, on the other hand, won't tell you that they're an attack arm for the Obama administration. They won't tell you about how they're tied at the hip with Think Progress as part of John Podesta's progressive media propaganda campaign, described as, quote, in their own words, quote, a war room for promoting the foreign and domestic policies of Barack Obama, Ron Paul, and that Ron Paul's team acknowledges our audience as enthusiastic supporters of his campaign. It's guilt by association, trying to link Ron Paul with the supposedly discredited, in their words, Alex Jones. But the question is this. If Alex Jones and INFOWARS are so discredited, then why has traffic to our website surged over the last 2 years, while traffic to MediaMatters.org has dwindled? Why does INFOWARS rank within the top 1,800 websites on Alexa.com, whereas Media Matters birds with one stone by smearing Ron Paul because he regularly appears as a guest on the Alex Jones Show? Woe betide. The headline, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones rallies for frequent guest Ron Paul. Quote, though Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul has received scorn from some in the media, he can count on a loud and toxic supporter, radio host Alex Jones, one of the country's leading conspiracy theorists and promoters of the claim that 9/11 was an inside job. And this piece basically tries to imply that it's some kind of dirty secret that we support the kidnapping so-called obese children. It's safe to assume that if these activity levels, if these exercise levels measured by these wristbands are not up to scratch, then harsh questions of the parents will be asked. Yet another reason to join the growing army of parents who have decided to homeschool their children. Moving on. Obama propaganda front Media Matters attacks Alex Jones and Ron Paul. The admitted Obama White House propaganda front Media Matters is now trying to kill two